Picture the scene. It is boiling hot outside, like unbelievably warm, uncomfortably hot, yet your boss says that you're not allowed to wear shorts to work. He goes on, saying it's against company policy, it's against the dress code. Just sit there, wear your trousers, and be uncomfortable all day. This man has that exact thing happen to him, but he says, no, I'm gonna go back, read the dress policy word for word, and instead come in wearing something that is in line with the code that's gonna shock, frankly, everyone. Let's get into the story. Boss said no shorts. I work at an office that sells bulk goods to businesses that use them, like retail outlets, etc. Our office doesn't usually have a strict dress code, but we recently got a new boss, Arsehat, who is quite literally the stick up my arse. He's constantly yelling at everyone about basic stuff, like punching in a minute or two late or early, or being a word or two off the script during outbound and inbound calls. Dealing with him in general has made me hate the job more. As it's getting hotter, I've been wearing khaki shorts to work for the past few days, which is something I've always done for the past few years, and nobody has confronted me about it before, so I figured nothing would change this year. But boy, was I wrong. About halfway through my shift, this boss comes to my desk and realizes I'm wearing shorts, and is visibly annoyed. He mutters something under his breath and goes back to his office. An hour later, I was called into his office where he proceeded to berate me about breaking dress code. He was fuming and ended the meeting with, "From now on, you follow dress code to the book or you're fired." Say no more, boss. That night, I went home and read up on the dress code rules. There was in fact a rule against shorts, so I was annoyed, but I kept on. And then I found it. There is no rule preventing males from wearing skirts or kilts. Here is where I devised my plan. I immediately ordered a pink and white striped kilt online, as well as matching knee-high socks and a shirt. There was no rule stated in the dress code against any of this, surprisingly. About a week later, the clothes arrived, and here is what ensued the following workday. I walked in, wearing my new pink business outfit, and immediately the whole office is staring at me. And the boss who came in to cover another boss's shift in the morning was beat red in the face and yelled at me to go into his office. He goes on a 10-minute rant about how I'm a useless employee and that he's going to fire me for not following the dress code to a T. I simply stated, I am in dress code. I urge you to read the employee handbook. He ended up reading the whole thing in front of me, and I could see him getting more and more angry as he realized I didn't break any rules. I asked him, "So, am I free to go back to work?" And he looked at me with a death glare, muttered something under his breath, and waved me off. Now, I tell you what, guys, there is not much more I like in this world than a man in a pink skirt. I've always said that. You can go back and watch my other episodes. I've always said that. In fact, I say it about once per episode. It's something I love. So fair play to OP. You're making my dreams come true. Ooh, ooh. That is so cringe. It, keep it in. But anyway, I've got to say, this is great malicious compliance, because if you're not allowed to wear shorts when it's super hot, remember at school? I remember at school we were told we weren't allowed to wear shorts sometimes when it was like 30 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's hot, like super hot, uncomfortably hot. Same as in work. Like if you're forced to wear your blazer or something, or you're forced to wear trousers, screw that, man. Who really cares? I don't. But yeah, one last thing I've got to request is, can I see that photo of you in a kilt? Because I want to. I really do. And I think you will do as well. Perhaps not as much as me, but just a little bit. Let's move on. You want a man to help you? No problem. One will clock in soon. This happened 16 years ago. When I was about 20 years old, I was a department manager in a big box hardware store. People said I acted 25, but I didn't even look 18. As a young female, I saw my fair amount of sexual discrimination, but the worst always came from women. This is the story of one such woman. I managed the paint department. I had 3 associates who worked for me. They loved me as a boss because I bought them a department radio, took the shifts they didn't want. I worked Friday close and Saturday mid, so my 2 younger guys could have time to have fun on Friday nights, and the older gentlemen took early Saturday mornings so they could sleep off their fun. In trade, I gave the older gentleman his ideal schedule. My team was awesome. One day, I was in the department alone, and a lady came up and asked me where she could find the 5-gallon oil-based primer. I let her know that my location didn't carry the 5-gallon size of that primer. She told me that we did and said that it was shelved right there, while suggesting I was too stupid to remember. Her husband gave me an apologetic look. I let her know that another location had what she was looking for, and that it was in fact in that exact location in that store. She let me know how stupid she thought I was for thinking that she could mix up stores. Then she began yelling, loudly insisting that I get a man out there to help her because she wanted someone competent and not a stupid little girl. Her husband actually tried to step in at that point, but I just smiled and let her know that a male paint associate would be clocking in any minute and that I would be happy to direct him to her as soon as he is on the clock. I smiled and waited for Joe to clock in. Now, Joe was great, and I knew he could handle this or I wouldn't have put him in this situation, but Joe was also new. Yes, he was learning things super quick, but he still relied on the rest of us for help. When I saw Joe walking up, I quickly said that there was a customer who needed help. I let him know that she was upset and asked him to do his best to answer her questions. Joe walked up to the lady. She said, "Finally, a man." She asked her question, explained where the product should be, and waited. Joe calmly let her know that he had never seen us carry a 5-gallon size of oil-based primer, but he said that he could check with the paint department manager. She was happy and loudly said she'd be happy to get some real help. Joe then walked up to me and started to ask me about 5-gallon oil-based primers. The lady quickly walked up and asked him what he was doing. He turned and said, "This is my manager. She runs this department." The husband laughed out loud, the woman stormed off, and I bought Joe lunch. Wow, a super interesting story right there. The most interesting part for me is when OP says that it's normally the women in the store, the women customers, that are the sexist ones that demand a man's help. Interesting, you wouldn't necessarily have thought that. And yes, I now have said interesting 4 times. Interesting stuff though. Again though, imagine the look on her face. Imagine her internal monologue. Thank God. Finally, a man to help me. Go and get someone much more senior and let's get this stuff done. Oh wait, it's the woman that I've just pretty much taken the mech out of. Feels bad. Feels bad. What's a shame is that you just know that she's not going to learn from this as well. She'll go into the next door, do the exact same thing, be surprised and embarrassed when it happens. Ultimately, again, yeah, and then just carry on with her life. GG, Karen, GG. Shady boss lied about my position to keep me from policy allowed benefit for years. I found out and it changed everything. A few years ago, I worked at a big retail company and had for many years. Eventually, I went through enough grad school education to get my license to work at a higher level. Much more pay, more job satisfaction, more responsibilities, fancy title, but the job market was rough. I stayed on with my company to work in a floater position, where I'd cover a large area and work at all the stores within that area on a rotating but irregular basis. Eventually, I wanted to get a staff position, where I have a single store assigned. The area was huge, the furthest store being over 100 miles from my home, and that is exactly where I was assigned to train for the new role. It was a rough store. Folks in my position were robbed and assaulted at gunpoint. The neighborhood was very unfriendly. The volume at the store was among the highest in the States. Staff turnover was, as you might expect, extreme. Well, after training, I wasn't really being scheduled to float to other stores, once a month at most. I asked to be scheduled a little more diversely, since most of the stores in my area were much closer to my home and didn't require 4 hours of driving a day. Bossman told me that I was the only floater experienced enough to handle that store. I didn't buy it, but what can you do, right? Well, a colleague told me about the mileage reimbursement policy. Floaters working at a store more than 50 miles from home can file for reimbursements of mileage over that 50 miles each way, even including meals. So, I filed a few of these out and sent them to my boss to sign. He didn't quite refuse, but he never actually signed and filed them. I suspect as soon as I left his office at our district center, he tossed them out. Bossman tells me later that they must be lost in the system. Eventually, the same colleague showed me how to fax those same forms to accounts payable, bypassing the district bossman. So I started doing just that. One day, bossman calls me in a panic. He wants to stop my filing of the forms. I asked to be floated close to home, but he still won't budge. He needs me at that miserable store. He promises me he'll make me a staff role at that store if I promise to stop faxing those forms. Now, staff roles are a promotion and usually come with better pay and a few other little conveniences. So I agree. Bossman says that there won't be a pay bump right away, but that it will come down the road. That never happened. 2 years later, the situation at the store has become too toxic even for me. I asked to step down from the star position to be a floater again and be allowed to float to other stores. Bossman says that I'm already a floater. I never was in a staff position, but that he can't let me work at other stores because it's better for me and the customers if I stay there for familiarity. Floaters do not get scheduled to stores exclusively, so I'm being singled out because they're still desperate to cover that dump of a store. I'm livid, so I start looking. It took me months, but eventually I found an opportunity to make my dream career transition. I put in my formal notice, and that is when the fun started. Remember that whole mileage reimbursement policy? Well, I kept meticulous track of all my shifts, and there is no statute of limitations baked into the policy. So I started filling out those reimbursement forms to retroactively cover every single shift from the past 2 odd years. I skipped the meal part since I didn't want to go through all that effort of finding receipts. I had a friendly store manager sign off on them, and I started sending them to accounts payable directly again. I didn't fax them all in at once, but for each shift in my final 2 weeks, I faxed a few dozen in. We still have fax machines in that line of work, believe it or not. I figured, what do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, accounts payable declines the forms. On my last few shifts, I started getting the checks from accounts payable. Not added to my paycheck, but sent to me directly. Mileage reimbursements are non-taxable income, so this was all tax-free money coming to me. It must have taken a while for the charges to show up on a balance sheet, because a few weeks after my final paycheck, I got a call from my now former boss man. He wasn't happy. He got some big loss prevention manager involved, and together, they started saying I was breaking some rule by requesting the payments. They specifically claimed I was ineligible because I agreed I wouldn't be eligible in a staff position. They then threatened legal action against me if I didn't remit the full amounts back that same week. But I had the email chain from when boss man said I was never staff and always a floater. I politely referenced that email chain before letting them know firmly that because I was lied to, our prior agreement didn't apply, and I was fully eligible all along. Corporate policy, as confirmed by HR, agreed with me, so I let them know I wasn't returning a single penny. In the end, the reimbursements amounted to well over $21,000, and I transitioned into my dream job. I could say that I would trade that money back for the time I lost commuting to that miserable store. Remember, 4 hours every shift, but all that pressure motivated me to make the best career move of my life. The great satisfaction of not only professionally surpassing my old boss, but also getting to tell him that his lies cost him way more on the way out is almost priceless. I also shared my story and method with many colleagues who were also being told wrongly by the boss man that they didn't qualify for this policy. OP, that is actually class, because not only have you made yourself $21,000 tax-free for free, as in you didn't have to work to get that money, you were just given it. Think of the amount of money that you might have also saved or earned other colleagues. It could be anything. It could be hundreds of thousands. In fact, it probably is. If there are other people in this company that weren't getting the benefit that they're, legally allowed to get, and they're then getting it, retrospectively, wow, this boss is in a lot of trouble, that's for sure. I mean, minimum 6 figures, I'd hazard a guess at. Probably, a high 6 figures. Who knows? It's a lot. And it's all because of you. I love it. Again, I feel like I always say it with stories like this, but I don't understand what the logic is from this boss. Are they just thinking that nobody will ever realize this? Nobody's ever gonna know? Just treating employees badly in general? I mean, forget about the money that you're allowed. Like, saying that you're gonna get a pay rise and a promotion, but then saying, oh no, we didn't actually give you that. How is that ever gonna benefit you? You're just gonna make your employees unhappy. They're gonna move because they don't like the work, like OP has done. So you're just losing good employees. Like, how is that a good business model? Hey, let me know down in the comments if you think that's a good idea. Personally, I think it's pretty shambolic. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of r/malicious compliance. Hope you enjoyed it. I've gone back on this subreddit because you know what? I love it. And in my opinion, I don't make enough videos on it. So if you did and you want to see more from this subreddit, drop a like on the video, watch some more malicious compliance right here, and subscribe. If you're a good boy, just do it.